Yevamos Daf. The test begins the 16th and final parak of the Masechta. We'll begin with the Mishnah, and we'll have one additional Mishnah towards the end of the Daf. So the first Mishnah is discussing what happens when a woman's husband goes to Medina Siyam. We get a report that he died. However, we don't know, did he have a son or did he have a brother? And these are relevant concerning Yibum. If he had a son, there's no Yibum. And if he had a brother, there is Yibum. These are two questions which we will have. The Gemara will go through 2.5 possibilities as to how we pass on the halachah. Then we get to the last Mishnah on the Daf, the second Mishnah, which will talk about when a woman is testifying that her husband had died, how does that affect a woman falling to Yibum to that husband? Does she have to assume that he's alive or dead? So let's begin. Mishnah discusses scenario: a man went to Medina Siyam and we received a report that he died. We believe the report, and therefore she knows that her husband is dead. The question is, does she fall to Yibum or not? So the two scenarios in the Mishnah: at the time that he left, in the first scenario, he had a brother, but he did not have a son, and therefore she was becheskas, she was assumed to fall to Yibum. The thing is, when he went, he took one of his wives with him. He took a tzara with him, and that tzara may have given birth, and therefore she can't fall to Yibum anymore. So do we assume that, are we concerned that there is now a child and there's no Yibum? So the Gemara says we have to be concerned both ways. The Mishnah says we have to be concerned both ways. We have to be concerned that there is a child and therefore she can't do Yibum. We have to be concerned that there is no child and therefore she can't go l'shuk, and therefore she requires chalitza. If you knew that she was pregnant, if you find out that she was pregnant, she gave birth, then you can assume that she has a heter l'shuk because her husband has a child. Okay. Second scenario is where he did not have any brothers and he didn't go with a wife. Didn't have a child either. However, he went with his mother, and his mother may have given birth to a brother there, and therefore this wife who's left here now may fall to Yibum to a brother, which we don't know whether he exists or not. Do we have to be concerned that there's a brother that exists and she can't go l'shuk because she has a Yavam out there? So here, the Mishnah discusses two sub-scenarios. Scenario one is where she left not pregnant, the mother. And there, everyone agrees, you don't have to be concerned that a child was born. The Gemara is going to ask, of course, what's the difference between this case and the first case where we are concerned the child was born, and here we were not. Now, the second scenario is where she left pregnant. So here, Rabbi Yeshua says, you still don't have to be concerned that a child was born, and you can assume that she has heter l'shuk. Here, though, the Chachamim disagree, and they say no, she has to be choshesh, she has to be concerned that there is a Yavam out there, and she can't do Yibum. Okay, so the Gemara begins. The Gemara has a lashon kasha, which the Gemara asks first, in the language where it says, in the first case, that if she finds out that her tzara was pregnant, then she can marry l'shuk. It says, the language that's used is shema muberes hi tzarasa. Maybe the tzara, the tzara is pregnant. So why do you have to say she the tzara? What's that all about? So the Gemara explains, you're only concerned about this woman. You don't have to be concerned that he married somebody else who you don't know about. So if you know for a fact that this tzara is not pregnant and that did not have a child, you don't have to be concerned he married somebody else who did have a child. That's not an issue. Okay, now the Gemara goes into the question itself. We said that in the first case, we aren't sure what halacha is. We don't know if she had a child or not. And therefore, she can't remarry, she can't go l'shuk. So the Gemara's question is, why don't you go basar rov? Paskin based on rov. Most women have a child at some point in their childbirthing career. So why don't we assume basar rov, he had a child, and therefore she's not falling to him, she's free to go l'shuk. So the Gemara says, this must be Rabbi Meir, who doesn't paskin anything based on rov. He's choshesh l'miyat, and therefore remains 50-50. We don't know whether he had a child or not, and she can't do either option. Gemara says, no, maybe not. It doesn't have to be Rabbi Meir. It could be that it's even the Chachamim. The Chachamim don't hold of rov in this scenario either. There are two types of rov. There's Ruba de Isa Kaman and Ruba de Lasa Kaman. Ruba de Isa Kaman is where you have a number of things in front of you. Some are from a minority, some from a majority. You don't know which one's which. So if you have a piece of meat came out of a bunch of stores, you don't know which store it come from. Some of them are kosher, some of them are non-kosher. They're all in front of you. Then you assume that it came from the kosher store. Or if you have Sanhedrin and they vote on something, some say that the person's guilty, some say he's innocent. So the halacha is with the rov. That's all in front of you. You see there's something tangible in front of you. Ruba de Lasa Kaman is where I don't have any numbers, I don't have any items in front of me. I have a general way the world works. Usually people give birth. Usually a woman has a child. That's Ruba de Lasa Kaman. That's a weaker rov. So everyone wants to say that the Rabbanan don't hold of that rov, and that's why here they don't paskin. Based on rov, remains a 50-50 suffix, and she can't do Yibum or heter l'shuk. So the Gemara asks, this is not true. The Rabbanan do hold of Rov. We know that. And we know that from the case of a Katan and a Ketana who fall to Yibum to each other. If you have a Ketana falling to Yibum, if you have a Katan who has a Yevama falling in front of him, so the Rabbanan say that they can go ahead and do Yibum, and Rabbi Meir says they can't. Now Rabbi Meir says that they can't. So Chalitza, they also can't do that. We know we have a lima that a Katan and a Ketana can't do a Chalitza. But, because it says Ish, and we have a hex between Isha and Ish. Okay, so that we know. But as far as Yibum, why can't they do Yibum? Rabbi Meir says because we are concerned for the Miyad that are an island Isser Asris. If they're an island Isser Asris and there's an Isser Shesach, so we can't have them do Yibum. And Chachamim say, no, we use the majority. Most children are not an island Isser Asris, so we don't have an issue. But this is Ruba Dalasa, come on, they're saying most children in the world are not an island Isser Asris. How does that affect this particular one right here? Because it's a general way the world works. Okay, it's Ruba Dalasa, come on. You see that the Rabbanan are willing to paskin, even in Isser Shesach, based on Ruba Dalasa, come on. Here, they should also be willing to paskin based on Ruba Dalasa, come on, that this woman probably has a child, and therefore this wife is free to go to the shuk. So the Gemara says, therefore, it must be Rabbi Meir. The reason that it's 50-50, she can't do either, is because it's Rabbi Meir. The Gemara says, okay, you want to say that it's Rabbi Meir. Now let's go look at the Seifa. The Seifa, we had a woman whose husband went to Medina Siyam. She was assumed she was not going to fall to Yibum because he didn't have a brother. Question is, did he have a brother born or not? And over there we said, we're not concerned, we're not afraid that he had a brother. Now, if you're Rabbi Meir, why not? Why aren't you concerned that there's a brother there? Rabbi Meir holds of Miyat. Now here it's also a situation of Rov and Miyat, but here the Rov goes the other way. Although the majority of women do give birth, the majority of women don't give birth to live, healthy male children that can do Yibum. 50% of the children are female, and a small percentage don't live at all. So you have a minority possibility that there's a brother out there. Now, if you're the Chacham, I may understand. You're not concerned here because it's only a minority option. However, if it's Rabbi Meir, minority, majority, Rov, Miyat are equal. You're Choshesh L'Miyat. And therefore, you should say 50-50 scenario. We should be concerned that there is a live brother out there and she is falling to Yibum and she's not mutter to go to the Shuk. So why is it different than the first case? So the Gemara tries a few options here. The Gemara first wants to say, maybe the pshat is because there is a chazaka. There is becheskas heter l'shuk, and therefore, even though you have a 50-50 question, or choshesh for the miyad, but because she was becheskas heter l'shuk, we follow chazaka, and she's allowed to stay mutter to the shuk. The chazaka tells us to assume there was no brother that was born. There was no yavam that was born. Says the Gemara, if that's true, that you're going to use chazaka to paskin, so then in our first scenario, the Reishi, you should also use chazaka to paskin. It had the same thing there. You didn't know whether or not there was a son born. You had a rov and a miyad. You said it's 50-50. Fine. So there, but you should still say she was becheskas falling to yibum, so therefore she should be mutter to do yibum according to chazaka. So the Gemara says, okay, that's not going to help us. Therefore, we'll have to come up with another option. So the Gemara says, maybe I can combine chazaka with the fact that it's an Isser Kares, and as opposed to an Isser Lav. Here in the Seifa, the entire question is whether or not she has a Heter L'Shuk, and the only Isser is an Isser Lav. Worst comes to worst, she's doing an Isser of Yevamos L'Shuk. That's an Isser Lav. So we allow chazaka to paskin the Isser Lav. In the first case, however, her chazaka was that she's b'cheskes Heter to do Yibum. If you want to rely on that chazaka, you're risking an Isser Kares. So maybe chazaka doesn't help for an Isser Kares, and that's why in the first case we can't follow chazaka, in the second case we can. So the Gemara rejects this. The Gemara says it makes no sense. They're both an Isser D'Oraisa. An Isser D'Oraisa you have to be choshesh for. It's the same rules. We don't have different rules of establishing what we follow in a suffix based on how big the onish is. That's not how things work. So the Gemara therefore offers an entirely new answer, and the Gemara says the issue is here that the rov and chazaka, are they saying the same thing or are they saying opposite things? In this case, in the Seifa, where you had the question of did the mother-in-law give birth to a brother, is there a brother or not? So Chazaka said that there is no brother, and therefore she's b'cheskas heter l'shuk. Rov also said that there's no brother, because a majority, it's 50% that even if she gave birth, it'll be a girl, and there's a minority that aren't going to survive or give a birth at all. So Rov says there's also no brother. The two of them together team up against the miyad. So even though Rabbi Meir holds that you have a rov and a miyad, it's 50-50, but if the chazaka is on the side of the rov, Therefore, he says that the miyad is not concernable. You paskin based on the rov and the chazaka together. However, in the first case, there you had the chazaka on the side of the miyad, because what happened there? You had the woman whose husband went to Medina Siyam. She was becheskas, falling to yibum. The question is there a son born? Is there a child born? Any child? And there it's a majority that there was a child, any child, because females count also. So majority that she had a child. Rov says she had a child, and therefore she is no longer falling to Yibam. Chazaka says no, she didn't have a child, and she is falling to Yibam. So here Chazaka goes together with the miyad. Situation like that, you are choshish for the miyad. You have Rov against miyad and Chazaka, and there it stays 50-50, and you can't paskin either way. So bottom line, what Rabbi Meir holds is that if you have a rov and a miyat, you assume it's 50-50. If you have a chazaka together with the miyat, you assume it's 50-50. If you have a chazaka together with the rov, that's enough to gang up on the miyat, and you don't have to be concerned for the miyat at all. Okay, the Gemara now goes on to the next phrase in the Mishnah. There we had seen the halacha is that in the Reisha, in the first case, where we don't know whether or not her husband and his other wife had a child, so we have to be afraid he did or he didn't. She can't do yibum, and she can't marry the shuk. So the Gemara says, why can't she do chalitza? The implication is that she's stuck and she can't do chalitza. Let her do chalitza. Now granted, she has to wait 3 months after he dies, because any woman has to, before she can remarry, she has to wait 3 months after the death of her first husband, even if he was not around, he was in Medina Siyam, and she can't be pregnant, still that's the rule. Also, she should have to wait 9 months after she heard that he died, because the tzara might be pregnant still. And if you do chalitza, and then later the tzara gives birth, the chalitza is void. So, and if the child is not going to survive, you'll have issues. So, let's do as follows. Wait 3 months, wait even 9 months, so that you know that if there was a child, the child is born already, and then do chalitza. And then, if there's a child, she's free to go to the shuk because there's no yibum scenario here. If there's no child, she got a chalitza. What's the problem? So the Gemara says the problem is as follows. The problem is that if you're going to give her chalitza, she's going to be usher to a kohen. Then let's say that child shows up, and he walks in. And now it turns out that the chalitza was void, and now she's mutter to a kohen. So what's going to happen is you can have a woman going from being usher to kahuna to being mutter to kahuna, and people are going to see that she ends up marrying a Kohen. You're going to learn a wrong halacha. They're going to assume that a chalutza is allowed to marry Kohanim. Now, even though often we do something called a kruz, we announce that it was a mistake, and therefore she's mutter to Kohanim. Somebody might not hear that announcement and learn a wrong halacha that a chalutza is mutter to Kohanim, and therefore we don't allow her to do chalitza. So the Gemara says, if this is true, so then in any scenario where you have a woman who's doing chalitza, and potentially you may find out that she didn't require it, you should have the same issue. People are going to say that she's a chalutza and she's marrying kohanim. But I'll show you that we don't have that. So I don't have to go too far. One daf earlier, we had the case of a woman who went with her husband to Medina Siyam. She came back and she said, my husband died, but I had a son. So if she said that my son died before my husband, it's irrelevant, it makes no difference, we believe her. If she said my son was alive at the time of the death of my husband, and now I don't have to do yibum, so we don't believe her. However, we are concerned she might be telling the truth. Therefore, we don't allow her to do yibum, we don't allow her to shuk, she has to get chalitza. Hold on a second, what if we later find out that that was true? That the son was really, there was a son, he was born, he was alive at the time of the death of the husband, therefore she never got a valid chalitza. The chalitza here was invalid, and she's mutter to kohanim, same problem. Now, how are we going to find out that the son really was there and alive? Now he's for sure dead anyway. So, he's not going to walk in. The woman's testifying that he died. So the Gemara says maybe witnesses will come and say that she was telling the truth, and that will matter her to Kohanim. You'll have the same issue. So Gemara says two possibilities, both of which are working on the angle that it's not possible for us to ever find out what the truth here was. Well, the second one is working on that angle. The first one is on a different angle that we won't have an issue. So the second one is that there were no witnesses. She's testifying, my husband, my son, and I were in a cave. There were no witnesses. So we're not concerned that there were witnesses who saw this. The other answer is that this woman was a grusha anyway. She was divorced from her previous marriage, and therefore she's not going to have a heter to kahuna anyway, so therefore this entire issue is not a concern. Now begin the next Mishnah, which discusses what happens when the death of the husband also affects someone else's yibum. So the case is as follows. You have two women married to two brothers. The two brothers both travel to Medina Siyam, and the wives travel with them. Let's say they travel to separate Medinos, and they both come back and they both say our husband has died. So they're both permitted to remarry, and they're believed that they don't have a husband. The problem is that they both fall to yibum to the other one's husband. Now, you would say, okay, what's the big deal? Well, you know that the other one is that the yavam in both is dead because we believe each one's wife that he is dead, and therefore he is not answering his own wife, and there is no yavam for his yavama. So Gemara says the problem is that a yavama is not permitted to testify about the death of the yavam of her future tzara. That is, you can't have, there is no nemanus of one woman to her yavam's, from her yavam's wife. So the two women are believed to say that the husband died as far as they're concerned, that they're not married women any longer, but they're not believed to say that their husband died, and therefore the other woman, it doesn't have a yavam to fall to yibum to, and therefore we have to be concerned both are alive and both fall to yibum, and therefore both are usher because they can't get yibum, assuming there's no other brother to do yibum. Now, what happens if one of the pair has witnesses that her husband has died? So then she's usher because she may be falling to yibum to her husband's brother. We don't have witnesses about her husband or brother. However, the other woman is permitted because she's believed to say that her own husband is dead as far as she's concerned, and there are witnesses that her yavam is dead, and therefore she has no issues left over here. Now, if one had a child, so she doesn't have to worry about yibum. She's believed to say that her husband is dead, and she doesn't have to worry about the other man because she has a child. Now, if one has a child and one does not have a child, of course, as we said, the one without the children would be forbidden. Now the Mishnah says, what happens if there were other brothers? Going back to the first case, there's no children, there were other brothers. So we could turn she falls to yibum. They both fall to yibum. We know they fall to yibum for sure because there are other living brothers, and they're both believed to say that their own husband died, and therefore they both fall to yibum. And let's say they go ahead and they do yibum, and then their next husband, the yavam, he dies, and now there's no one else. The only concern is, was their original yavam still alive? They had testimony based on that man's wife that he was dead, but we don't believe her. So what do we do now? That each woman went and did yibum. She went and married her dead brother's husband. Can we assume now that she must have been telling the truth and therefore free the other woman from yibum or not? So the Tanakama says no, it doesn't make a difference. She's still not believed. Rabbi Elazar says no, in this case she is believed, and you don't have to worry about yibum. All right, the Gemara now begins. The Gemara quotes a brisa that just adds one more case to this. If one has Adim and children, and the other woman has neither Adim nor children, they're both believed. The one with the Adim and the children is believed because she has children, and therefore she doesn't have to worry about Yibum. The other one is believed because she's believed to say that her husband is dead as far as she's concerned, and she doesn't have to worry about Yibum because there are witnesses. The other woman came with the witnesses that the man was dead. All right, so that solves that. Now the Gemara wants to know what's pshat in Rabbi Elazar. In the end, we said that if they both did yibum, you don't have to worry about the possibility that they were lying about their husbands anymore. The Gemara says, why not? Is it that he always holds you believe the Yevama? His opinion is that Sarah is believed, Yevama is believed. Or is it that once she did a yibum, then you trust her, because there's no way she would go ahead and do an Isra Eshesach just to lie to mess her tzara up. The Gemara says, what's the difference? The Gemara says, nafkamina is, can you allow the other woman to remarry before the actual yibum was performed? If she said she's going to get married and she didn't do it, can you allow the other woman or not? So the Gemara is going to discuss potential proofs on the next daf.